You are now watching The Meech.
I used to watch a lot of cartoon reviews, mostly in 2014, and throughout the 2010s. Through that period, we saw some awful cartoons. Shows like Breadwinners and Planet Sheen remain some of the most obnoxious shows I have seen, but most of the cartoons then were bad mostly due to lowbrow humor, cringe, and bad animation. But never could I ever imagine just how low animation could go, because in true 2020s fashion, 2020's bad is something I never could have imagined for animation. Let's start off from the beginning in 2020. Gross out humor is nothing new, but where I draw the line is having a creepy fairy going around the world inhaling the world's farts. And when he inhales them, he makes this face. This creep straight up looks like a perverted cereal mascot, and the fact that a team of writers came up with this and it got animated without question is incredibly concerning. It's also from Total Dramarama, also known as the tried and true baby spin-off, because nobody has original ideas anymore. Just take a look at SpongeBob. Disney is another great example of this. Relying heavily on nostalgia and live-action remakes, Pinocchio is another gem. Beer and cigars, that is taking it way too far, even though the message was condemning them. But Pinocchio stumbling upon hyper-realistic detailed horse crap, then have him huff it only to proceed to examine it? Well, that's just dandy. And the funny part is that the examination of doo-doo was the only standout moment from what is nothing more than a by-the-books cash grab remake. Bad and lazy writing has existed since the inception of entertainment. These cases are just especially bad. But if you really want to have some of that 2020s flavor, why not have some NFTs thrown into the mix? The Red Ape Family is what I thought would be the worst cartoon I would ever watch. Obviously, its entire purpose is promoting a scam, but if you're paying thousands of dollars, sometimes millions of dollars, for a link to a JPEG, I don't think you're competent enough to understand what quality actually is. But even disregarding the NFT aspect, the Red Ape Family is a disaster in every way. The plot makes no sense. The characters have no backstory or introduction. Like, there's literally a scene where Laurel and Hardy see the spacecraft fly by and are like, "You won't get away with this, Chucky," and no context is even provided. And on top of all of this, the animation is atrocious. It appears to use some weird motion capture rig, and it looks terrible. At the very least, though, the second episode is actually animated decently enough, but it still has zero direction, and none of it makes sense. Quite literally, the definition of nonsense. It's literally a Crypto Bros inside joke turned into a show. I thought cartoons couldn't get any worse. I thought this was the bottom of the barrel. But at the very least, the Red Ape Family is so obscenely awful, it can be kind of funny. I love how the passport guy was essentially just Dill from American Dad, and the second episode actually had some pretty funny moments. One that stood out is a joke following Olive saying, "I know one thing we don't eat." I don't support NFTs, and the show is still terrible, but it's bad in the sense where I can at least laugh at it in an ironic way. But never have I ever seen a show as vile and made out of spite more than the recent show Velma. There's been a lot of discussion around this series for many reasons, and I wanted to see just how bad it was for myself out of morbid curiosity. I don't have HBO Max, but I did have the misfortune of seeing it. If you watch it via other means, who cares? Mindy Kaplan clearly wants your attention anyway, and if HBO Max is fine with removing animated shows for them to make way for this crap, why should we care? Just the thought of giving this show more attention is conflicting, but it is so bad and so unbelievably horrible that I wanted to make a video showcasing my thoughts on it so you guys won't ever have to suffer through it. Just for context, this might seem surprising, but I have never seen an episode of Scooby-Doo, mainly because I primarily watched Nickelodeon, and by the time I got around to Cartoon Network, shows like Adventure Time and Regular Show were releasing, and I was more interested in those. So considering that I do not have attachment to this series, and for me to feel this disgusted after watching Velma, says a lot, and I couldn't even imagine how much worse it is for Scooby-Doo fans. Because this is quite literally the worst cartoon I've ever seen. We have had a perverted farting elf, Pinocchio huffing poop, an entire show designed around shilling for NFTs, and I can still assure you that Velma is the absolute worst show I've watched. This show specifically is designed to be a spin-off of Scooby-Doo, but it completely misses the point and it's clear that the Scooby-Doo IP was only used to get some notoriety for this show, for it to get attention, because otherwise, this show would pretty much go over the radar, but that doesn't mean it still wouldn't be terrible. Velma, played by Mindy Kaling, is essentially just Mindy Kaling self-inserted into the role of Velma. Like, it's if they did a Danny Phantom reboot, and I played Danny Phantom, but I just made Danny Phantom a character that's exactly like me. It's pretty much what it's like. Although in this case, if Velma is similar to Mindy Kaling in real life, I would never want to associate with her in my life. Because Velma, along with the other characters in the show, are extremely unlikable. When you have a show, don't you want to have a cast of characters that's likable, that are memorable? In this show's case, it seems to go out of its way to make sure the characters are as unlikable and as horrible as ever. You got Velma, who is mean, egotistical, and arrogant beyond belief. Then you got Daphne, who is arrogant as well, and also sex-crazed. And then you got Fred, who's essentially just the spoiled brat, and also egotistical. Really, the only main character in the show that just isn't completely unlikable is Norville, who's essentially Shaggy. And the only reason because of that is because he genuinely seems nice compared to the other characters and is somewhat sane, but when that's saying something right there, where the character being sane and somewhat nice is the highlight, it really goes to show how bad the character development is. And it's not just the characters, the whole show, just the tone of it in general, seems that the writers behind it just hated their audience, and this was made out of nothing but spite. There are a lot of shows and movies out there that are developed solely to be cash grabs. We talked about Disney's Pinocchio remake last year, and since I mainly cover games on the channel, obviously I've covered many games that are just lazily made. Games like Mario Strikers Battle League and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet that are just rushed out to get a quick buck. But in those cases, none of those are developed with hatred and spite. They're lazy, but they don't capture the emotion of disgust that I'm getting from Velma. And what I mean by this, I mean that this show completely just hates its audience and insults them. There are a lot of fourth wall breaking meta jokes, essentially saying, yeah, we know that the show is bad, we know you hate it, but we are just gonna say that you hate it and then expect a laugh out of it because haha, it's true. Haha, fourth wall breaking humor. Stuff like, oh, adults who are watching cartoons, you know, just stuff along the lines of that, and they think it's so funny doing it, but it'd actually be funny if you were proving them wrong. But you absolutely aren't. And just so much of the show is vulgar for the sake of being vulgar. Adult cartoons are known to do this. A lot of adult cartoons, I would say most of them are vulgar, but usually it was for comedic relief or there was a point to it. Shows like South Park, Family Guy to an extent, because oftentimes that show will just do it just to get a reaction, especially in the newer episodes. But here, the vulgar content is just unbelievable, and it's too much for someone who's even grown up with stuff like South Park. And I've seen the Ren and Stimpy Adult Party cartoon. Not even 2 minutes in, and you have a shower segment at a high school. This is some big mouth levels of creepy here. And the fact that this got approved and is highlighted by HBO Max, how is this okay? I don't understand it. And this isn't the only instance of it. The entire situation surrounding Fred is essentially just more of that. And it is absolutely disgusting. But with the writing of the show, it's not just the comedy and it's not just the characters. The writing is terrible as well. The plot surrounds a murder mystery, but the conflict is just Velma hallucinating. Which essentially means we couldn't think of any actual conflict, so we just wanted to include some hallucinations because we don't really care, and I guess it'll serve as a conflict anyway. So the writing is lazy, and it's also filled with hatred. And this show in general, the hate it's receiving, it is well deserving. What comes around goes around. Like I said before, I don't have any particular attachment towards the Scooby-Doo series, but I can say with uttermost certainty that this is the worst show I've ever watched, and for anyone curious to watch it, reviews will do it enough. I watched the show, and a friend of mine reviewed it, he sent me his review, and the review he gave was pretty much the same as watching this show. It's not worth it. It's a waste of time, it's disgusting, and you're better off literally watching anything else. But anyways guys, I'm considering doing more animation reviews, and they will be of actually decent shows, and even if they are horrible, it's going to be better than this. So let me know what you thought of the video and if you'd like to see more of this, and if so, what cartoons would you like to see me cover? Well, anyways guys, thanks for watching and keep calm and da-da on.